Dr. Danny Brassell is a highly sought after speaker, trainer, and coach known as, oh, I love this, Jim Carrey with a PhD. But Dr. Danny went to 18 schools before he was 12 years old, and everyone made fun of him because he stuttered. Today, it is ironic that he now gets paid huge sums of money to travel the world and help people speak. Dr. Danny Brassell never, ever gave up hope.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Dr. Danny Brassell has spoken to over 3,500 audiences worldwide, and he has authored 18 books, including his latest that we're going to talk about today, Misfits and Crackpots. The co-founder of the world's top reading engagement program, Danny is on a mission to bring joy back into education and the workplace. He helps entrepreneurs, individuals, and organizations leverage speaking on stages as a major client lead source. Welcome, Dr. Danny.
Thank you so much for having me, Carol. More importantly, thanks for spreading some joy around the world. We need a lot more of you.
Start with your story. I'm intrigued. Tell us your story.
Well, if I was going to write an autobiography, Carol, I think I'd probably name it Pivots because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives. 30 years ago, I was a journalist covering President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I loved my job. I got to meet every editor of every major daily. And one editor offered me a job doing the city beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend, meanwhile, a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles in the inner city for $25,000 a year. So I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, Carol, for the high pay. And I fell in love with teaching. I've actually taught all age levels from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. In 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam. And I could bore everybody with my woe is me story, but I'm a positive person and I like to focus on the lessons learned. First of all, my wife is an incredible human being. She stuck through thick and thin with me. I just adore her. Second of all, I learned that money's not everything because you can lose it in a snap. Third, I try not to judge other people anymore because I realize if you don't know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person because I probably would have said bad things about what I had done, but you don't really know.
Right.
Fourth, I became a Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to confess, but the more I read the Bible, I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And then fifth, my accountant said that I was going to have to file bankruptcy unless I made a certain amount of money. So I started speaking on the side and I hit that number right on the number. Well, the next year, Carol, he gave me a much higher number and I hit that number right on the number. So in year three, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically during one of the worst economic downturns, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which earned me the attention of a lot of people looking for a coach. And I always had resisted coaching, Carol, because as a teacher, I've always had a very high standard for my students. I actually will not let you fail. I'm going to stick to you and hold you accountable until you
Awesome.
succeed. But now that I work with primarily entrepreneurs and business owners and C-suite executives, I find that they're highly motivated and they do the work. And I've actually just really enjoyed what I do. So that's a very long answer to your short question.
Actually, I want more because I want your story of when you were a little boy and all the schools and everything that you were involved with emotionally there and how it affected you.
Well, I was blessed. I mean, I had great parents. My parents were always very encouraging to my brother, sister, and me, and they basically said that we could do anything, but we need to always try our best. And like you mentioned in your kind introduction, I stuttered as a child, and then eventually I went to a school where a teacher she would sing things to me, and I found that I could sing them
Mm,
back without my stutter, kind of like the movie The King's
yes,
Speech. And
yes,
eventually I lost my stutter and I became a swan. But I always, when I'm working with kids that feel like they can't achieve anything or they're disabled in some way, I just say, hey, anything is possible when you put your mind to it. My daughter had a teacher that discouraged her recently, said she couldn't do something, and I looked at my daughter. I said, well, when a person says you can't do something, what they're really saying is they can't do it. Don't let other people put their limitations on you. Anything is
right.
possible. That's a message I think more people have to hear every day.
Yes, yes. Any other messages?
No, I mean it's just ironic. I grew up hating reading, and my father's a librarian, and I just I always hated the public library. It always smelt funny to me. The furniture was always uncomfortable. There was always some elderly woman telling me to be quiet. There's always some freaky homeless guy hanging out by the bookshelves, thinks he's a vampire. And it wasn't until I started teaching in the inner city where I basically said shame on me because I realized I was truly blessed. I mean, I lived in a home where both of my parents were present. We were poor, but we always had food on the table. And my parents always read to us kids in front of us kids, and we had plenty of access to reading materials. And so it really became one of my passions to get kids to love reading because I find that schools do an adequate job of teaching kids how to read. But the question I always ask people is, well, what good is it teaching a kid how to read if they never want to read? I teach kids why to read because I've never had to tell a kid, go turn on the TV. I've never had to tell a kid, go play a video game. And I never want to have to tell a kid, go read. I want them to choose to do it because they love it. And there's simple strategies I share with parents on ways to get their kids pumped up about reading.
Give us a couple.
Probably the most popular strategy I share with people is turn on the closed captioning on your television set. And people will always say, well, wait a second. If the if the show is in English and the subtitles are in English, what good does that do? I'm like, well, that's a fair point. Let me make a point. Have you ever watched a show with subtitles and not looked at the subtitles? It's actually very difficult to do. Your brain is actually directed towards the text.
Mm,
And there's actual research that supports what I'm saying. If you look at reading scores around the world, the more kids watch TV, the lower their reading scores are in every single country on the planet except for one. The country where kids watch the most TV also has the highest reading scores in the world. It's Finland. And people always ask me, well, how can that be? I'm like, well, because Finland makes really bad TV shows. And so what they have to do is they have to import all these old American sitcoms like Happy Days, Welcome Back, Kotter. They translate them into Finnish. The kids are reading all the time. So that's a simple strategy any parent can
oh
do.
my goodness.
I
Wow.
have three. Yeah, I have three kids of my own. When they were little, I created a habit in the kids. I have a feeling that television's here to stay, and I don't discourage technology. I try to show people how to use technology to their advantage. And so I set the rule very early on. My kids can watch all the TV they want, but the price of admission is they have to bring me something to read. And so when they were little, they'd bring me picture books and we'd read the picture book together. Now they're all older. And so they'll bring me probably usually their iPads and we'll read some news article or something funny that silly they saw on the internet and we'll read that together and then they can watch the television. So that's an easy habit. Another thing you can do, again, I have three kids and my wife, and what I do is once a week I have a book date with each of them. So my oldest daughter, she's 21 now and she likes Game of Thrones, and so we're reading George R. Martin's Fire and Ice, Song of Fire and Ice, and I'm not exactly thrilled with some of the language and situations in the book, but I have to practice what I preach. That's what she's excited about, so we read that together. My son, he's always into war stuff, and so we saw the movie Master and Commander, and so we're tackling that book by Patrick O'Brien, which really is humbling, Carol, because I have to get out my dictionary about 4 times per page because it's written in like 18th century nautical terms. It's crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then my youngest daughter, for some reason, she likes literature. And so we're reading The Great Gatsby, which I hate that book, but she likes it. And I guess reading it to her, I realized that even though I hate the story, that F. Scott Fitzgerald, he really knows how to craft a sentence. And then my wife, she has this series of books. I actually really enjoy them. They're called The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. It's about Elizabethan England. This young girl and her three best friends are these different guys, and it's just like a sweet series. I like nobody's using the F word, nobody's getting raped. It's like nice.
Right, right.
It's a nice book and it's a nice series that I recommend it all the time. The author, her name is Beth Brower, and I adore the books. I can't believe they haven't been made into a movie yet. This is how I know I'm just old, is they just don't make things that are wholesome anymore. And I'm not
Exactly.
trying to be square. It's just like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's nice every now and then when you can just read a sweet story.
And if you can find them and share
Yeah.
them, yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's wonderful.
That's
Yes.
right.
Well, I really like what you said, first of all, about the closed caption, because my husband and I have been using closed caption only because it avoids arguments. We can't say, oh, she said that. No, he said, we've been doing that for decades already.
I
And
love
it
it.
worked.
Yeah, the big thing I tell people is the research is very clear. It doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. It doesn't matter if you're
Okay.
reading James Joyce or James and the Giant Peach. People who read more read better. I always tell parents the little boy who only reads Captain Underpants is going to become a better reader than the little boy who refuses to read anything. Captain Underpants is the gateway drug to Shakespeare. But first of all, you got to get the kid hooked. And one of the problems
Right.
I see in schools is they're always requiring specific books for kids to read. When I was in high school, I had a teacher and she required us to read The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And no offense to people who love Nathaniel Hawthorne. Basically, the book is about Hester Prynne commits adultery and she has to wear an A on her chest. And I remember getting disciplined because I raised my hand and I asked my teacher if I could wear a B on my chest because I was so bored reading that
Oh,
book.
oh,
And I wonder, if that teacher would have just listened to me, then maybe she would have just taken the time to find out what I was interested in.
right.
You'd be amazed at, because I love reading sports books, and most of the sports books I read are written at a very high level. So for some reason, people just, there's actual research that shows when Stan Lee's Fantastic Four comic came out in, I think, 1964, reading scores went up in America because they're written at a very high vocabulary level. And yet people discourage kids to read comic books. My dad, probably the most intelligent person I've ever met in my life, very well read, but when he was a kid, instead of reading the classics, they used to have a series called Classics Comics where they would take these boring classics and they'd make it into a comic book, and that's how he read all of his classics was comic
Oh,
books.
you're kidding. Never heard that.
It's a
Wow.
really I mean, Carol, when I was teaching second grade, I had a little boy, Kiara. Now I'm going to date myself. This was a long time ago. So Kiara, his first grade teacher told me, Kiara don't know nothing. I'm like, well, thank you for that. But Kiara, who don't know nothing, comes into my classroom one day. He's like, hey, Mr. Brassell, you see Barkley last night? He had 18 points and 16 rebounds. I'm like, thank you, Kiara, because from that day forward, every day after lunch, I'd sit him on my lap. We'd read the LA Times sports page together. And guess what, Carol? At the end of the year, he was my best reader. And all that kid
Wow.
read about was sport. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't expand kids' horizons. I mean, I'm big into exposing kids to poetry and to literature and things like that. But you got to find out what your kid's interested
Right.
in. So, your daughter did a good job reading to the kids and figuring out what they're interested in. I applaud her for that. Passionate about getting people to love even with adults. I mean, if you love reading People magazine, read People magazine. If you love reading about fishing, read fishing books. It doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how. I mean, the only other thing that I like to stress with people is I just think life is too short to be reading a lot of negative things. I think you become what you read. It's kind of like last week I was watching this horrible show on TV. It was called The News, and totally depressed me because it's so negative. And I like to read things that make me happy and fill me with positive. I mean, I usually start the day by reading the Bible, and I usually end the day with reading something inspiring because life's too short. And it's one of the reasons I like your podcast, Carol, is because it's positive. Too much negativity around us.
It's interesting that you brought that up because I have friends who love to report the news to me on a regular basis. Even though I do listen to the news, I'm very careful what news I listen to. And I think you made a very good point there. I mean, it's what you want to dwell on. And if you get excited about the negativity, what does that say about you? Did you hear that? Did you? It's like a form of
Yeah.
gossip, you know?
It's just gossip. My
Yeah.
uncle watches one of the news stations 24 hours a day, and I recently asked him if the president had called him to ask his advice, and he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you watch so much news. I figure you're the most
I
informed
did it.
person. I'm sure the president wants to get your opinion on these things. I mean,
Oh,
what do
that's
you
hilarious.
do? Yeah, what are you going to do? There's like an earthquake like halfway around the world. What are you going to do about it? Like
Right.
if you're actually part of the solution, then by all means watch the news and figure out how you're going to give aid to that place. But I hear people all the time, they're stressed out. I'm like, you're more stressed out than the person that lived in the 17th century. And the reason they weren't stressed is because news traveled like in years, not in
Yeah.
milliseconds.
A lot of people say, well, don't you want to be informed? They come back with that. Well, there's types of information too, correct? And there's misinformed and informed. That's a whole other
Well,
subject.
I volunteer with the Special Olympics, which is one of the most incredible
Oh,
organizations
wow.
on the planet, Carol. And these are people that are mentally challenged. And guess what? They're the happiest people I've ever met. And
Mm,
so maybe a little bit of ignorance isn't a bad thing.
right. Ignorance is bliss, they say. Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, here is a quote from you, and I love this. It says, I'm a puppy dog, easily distracted and curious. When I saw a lot of people who struggled with putting together speeches that actually increased their business, I knew I could help. So tell us about that.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another: gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
As an entrepreneur is $15,000 for a 2-day training where about 50 of them would gather in a room, and Coach Jimmy and I would train them for 2 days on how to put together what now we call your well-crafted story. When I covered President Bush Sr. 30 years ago, he would call it a stump speech. Superhero movies would probably call it your origin story. You can call it peanut butter and jelly. It doesn't matter what you call it. But basically, this is a speech that you're going to deliver again and again to new audiences to introduce you to people, to get them intrigued about whatever it is that whatever your offer is. And the problem I had with it was threefold. First of all, I don't think you ever learn best when you're with 49 other people and we can't really get specific about your business.
Mm.
Second of all, I don't believe in 1 or 2 day trainings. The people that are stuck with me as a coach, they have to understand I actually am there for life because I want to see you succeed, and I'm going to check in on you every now and then to make sure, well, where are we at in your progress? It's very important to me. And then third, um, the companies that I've worked with, they often, the way they train people to become speakers is they want you to focus on a traumatic moment in your life to build empathy with your audience. And there's three reasons why I have a problem with that, Carol.
Mm.
First of all, the world just survived a global pandemic. All of us have had bad things happen to us. I don't think the world needs to hear more sad stories. I think we need to hear more stories of hope. Second of all, what I'm training you to do is to create a presentation that you're going to deliver again and again to introduce yourself to new audiences. do you really want to talk about the most traumatic moment of your life again and again? I mean, I have a friend, his daughter was killed in a school shooting. He's delivered that speech over 1,000 times. I mean, Carol, you got to be a lot stronger than me to talk about the worst day of your life again and again. I have no idea how he does it. And third, and this is where people get angry with me, I have one objective when I'm on stage. I want you to leave feeling better than when you came in. I want you laughing, smiling, happy. Personally, I believe there's something admirable about that as a goal. I believe the people that tell the same sad story again and again, by the 20th time they're telling it, now those are crocodile tears and now they're being manipulative. And I'm not saying it's not an effective sales strategy. It's actually a very effective sales strategy. But I personally don't want to have to take a shower after I get off stage because I just manipulated my audience. There are ethical ways to get people interested in doing business with you. And that was the other thing that was appealing to me. A lot of people, they get excited when the people they work with get standing ovations or people tell them they're great speakers. But I only have one measure of my success with you. The only measure of success we're going to measure the effectiveness of your talk is how many people in your audience determine that they want to continue the relationship and take the next step with you. Now, that next step, it could be unpaid. It could be something as simple as subscribe to my podcast or, sign up for my newsletter or book a free phone call. It could be a paid offer like buy my product or invest in my coaching or donate to my program. But the only way we're going to check to see how you're doing is we're going to measure your effectiveness by how many people in your audience are deciding to take that next step. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a gentleman a few months ago, Richard. Jimmy and I were working with him, and Richard is a very successful financial planner. And the way he gets customers, Carol, is twice a week, he invites like 15 couples in their 50s to a fancy steakhouse, and they get a free steak dinner, but then they have to hear his pitch.
Right, right,
And so he used to start off, he'd say, "Hi, I'm Richard." By the way, whenever I use names, I'm actually not using their real name. I
right.
believe in a little bit of discreetness, discretion. And so he'd say, "I'm Richard. I have 30 years in the industry. I've made my clients over $1 billion. I've worked with this famous person and this famous person." And finally, I said, "Richard, time out. What are the three most important qualities of real estate?" Location, location, location. It's
Right.
it's all right to brag, but you're doing it the wrong part of your talk. I'm a big believer in something a wonderful speaker, Brene Brown, talks about vulnerability. And if there's one mistake I see a lot of people make, it's bragging. And this is what I'd like your audience to understand. Stop talking about your successes. Start talking about your failures, because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you share your own failures, the more your audience is going to see themselves in you. And that's what you're trying to do in a talk, is to really connect with your audience. And so we changed Richard's opening. So now he talks about the very first client that he booked 30 years ago. And Carol, it's just a comedy of errors. He made one mistake after another. I have no idea why this person invested money with him. And this was the interesting thing that Richard told us, Carol. He said that normally when he speaks, he notices that of the couple, the husband always has his arms crossed, looking at him like, how much is this going to cost me? What's it going to take? What do you need me to do? But now that he changed his story, that same guy is leaning forward, patting his knee because he's laughing so hard. And this was interesting. He said he used to book about 6 of the 15 couples to a free consultation after the talk. Now that he's changed the opening of his speech, he's averaging 12 of the 15. So, I mean, that was a dramatic improvement, but this is what we're looking at, is how can we get more people to engage with you? I mean, I've had lots of wonderful mentors. One of my mentors was a guy by the name of Zig Ziglar. And Zig, towards the end
Yes.
of his life, and he's passed on now, but towards the end of his life, he wanted to measure his effectiveness as a speaker. And he was overwhelmed to find that out of the 100 letters he would receive from people, one talked about his speaking, and the other 99 were about his courses and his cassette tapes and his books and things like that. And this is what I tell people is you can definitely have a positive impact on an audience when you speak to them, but you can have a lifetime impact when those people choose to continue the relationship with you. So this is why you have a responsibility on stage to make a compelling offer to get those people to really continue that relationship. Because when you're on stage, your job is to serve your audience. You have to look at your audience like they are starving to death and I have food, and if they don't get my food, they're going to die. Look at it from a service mindset instead of a sales mindset, and you'll definitely have a much more positive effect on your audiences.
I love that what you just said. Look at it from a service position. Wow, that is. I'll say that again.
Yeah, look at it from a service, not a sales-minded
Right,
perspective. I never
right.
like the term servant leader because by definition, a leader is a servant. You should be there to
Yes.
serve. Whether your audience decides to take that next step with you or not, you have a responsibility. They've given you their most precious asset, their time. You have a responsibility to serve them as much as you can, and you'd be amazed. I have people that I spoke to 11 years prior and they never did business with me, but we stayed in touch, and 11 years later they decided to, some people start the relationship 11 years later, some people are running to the back of the room to get your offer immediately, but people are a little bit different, and but you still have a responsibility to serve your audience.
So your website and workshops, etc. Can you offer the audience, and where can they find you?
Well, as a thank you to you, Carol, and to your audience for having to listen to me, I wanted to give everybody a freebie. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give you your own well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the process, the 5 C's process that Coach Jimmy and I take our clients through to help them create their well-crafted stories. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of putting together an effective presentation and shows you exactly where to put things and why to put them there. And what this means for you is the peace of mind that you have a system that's going to keep on not just attracting leads, but converting those people into clients. You get that at freestoryguide.com. And Carol, I just really appreciate you giving me this platform today to be able to speak to you and your audience. And I truly appreciate all that you do.
Well, it goes both ways, believe me. I am relating so much with what you're saying and getting excited in other areas as well because you're preaching to the choir. And I sincerely appreciate what you're saying. So now your book, tell us about that.
Well, I'm now up to 19 books. I'm writing 3 right now concurrently. But when I was a middle school teacher, I was the only teacher at my school that none of my students were ever late to class. They were never tardy. And the reason was because I always started off with a Paul Harvey story. I don't know if you remember
Oh,
Carol
yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
when I was a kid, Paul Harvey would come on the radio every day at 12:15. He'd
Yep.
say, "I'm Paul Harvey with the rest of the story." And so I'd always share a rest of the story with my students at the beginning of class. Each story is about 5 minutes long, and they were always great because you're trying to guess who's he talking about or what's the company he's talking about. And my students loved them, Carol. But the problem with the Paul Harvey stories is a lot of his stories are about people like Fred Astaire and companies like Sears Roebuck. And kids nowadays, they don't really have any understanding of who or what
Right.
these are. And so I wrote a book called Leadership Begins with Motivation, which had more contemporary stories about people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, people like that. But after I wrote that book, Carol, I read it, and completely unintentionally, I noticed a lot of my examples were of white male Americans. And so that's
Huh.
what prompted me to write Misfits and Crackpots, which that book is the same style, but most of my stories are of women, minorities, and international people. And
Huh.
it's probably the most fun I've ever had writing a book because I never realized how there's so many truly magnificent people that we don't really hear about in the standard curricula. So it's a lot of fun. And I just think that everybody needs to hear stories about amazing people from all walks of life.
Well, I really like that because I fit both of those categories.
Well, and if you're a lazy reader, I created a podcast, which really isn't a podcast. It's just me reading aloud a chapter every week for the people that are too lazy to read it on their own. So you can always listen to it in the car,
Right,
Carol.
right. Exactly. All right. Is there anything else you would like to say, both in closing or anything else that you want to talk about?
Well, when I was a teacher, whether I was teaching my little ones or my older students, they always had to bear with listening to me recite the same refrain to them as they left class. I always said, remember, kids, education is valuable, but execution is priceless. Knowledge
Mm,
is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. Knowing what the right thing to do and doing the right thing are two very different things. So let's go out, do the right thing, and make this world a better place. And so I would give that same refrain to everybody in your audience. Be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
very good. Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
And I appreciate everything that you shared today and look forward to sharing this with the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You have been an encouragement to me. I know you have been an encouragement to the audience, and I thank you.
You're great, Carol. Thanks for all you do. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.